Hey guys, so here's part 2 of the 2.2 notes. We're now going to decide if the function is a polynomial. If so, we're going to write it in standard form. We're going to name it and figure out the leading coefficient and degree. Let's look at part A here. We have h of x equals x to the fourth minus 1/4 x squared plus 3. Now remember, to figure out if it is a polynomial function, there is 3 criteria that we need to satisfy. 1, that our basically leading coefficient is not going to be 0. Well, if we look, our first term is x to the fourth, and that is our largest degree. So our leading coefficient is 1, so that works out. 2, our exponents are whole numbers. So if we look at the exponents, we have to the fourth and to the second power. They are whole numbers. And 3, all the coefficients are real numbers. So our coefficient in front of the x to the fourth is 1. We have negative 1/4 and 3. All of those are real numbers. So since we satisfied all 3 criteria, yes, this is a polynomial. So now we need to write it in standard form. Remember, we go from descending order, meaning we go from the largest exponent to the smallest. Now the nice part is this one is actually already written in standard form. 4 is our largest exponent, then we go to the next one, which is squared, and then we go to the constant. Remember, your constant should be the last term. Now we are going to go ahead and talk about the degree. So remember degree, which we call n, that's going to be the largest exponent. And really that should be your first term when you write it in standard form. So our degree here is going to be 4. And going back to your notes, remember that 4 is going to be quartic. That's what this is called, quartic. Now one last thing we're going to do, which didn't ask us to, but we're going to talk about leading coefficient. That is the coefficient that is on the first term. So we look at x to the fourth, which is our first term. The coefficient in front of it is 1. So that's our leading coefficient. Okay, let's go ahead. We're going to do C next. Okay. I'm kind of going out of order here. Okay, f of x equals 5x squared plus 3x to the negative fourth first minus x. Okay, we're going to see if it satisfies the 3 criteria. 1 is our a sub n, or our leading coefficient, not 0. So squared would be our largest exponent, and the leading coefficient is 5, so we satisfy that. Are all the exponents whole numbers? Oh, well, let's look here. We get negative 1. Negative 1 is actually not a whole number. It's an integer, but not a whole number. So because we have one of our exponents and it's not a whole number, that means no, this is not a polynomial. So if you do not satisfy all 3 criteria, then it's not a polynomial. Okay, go ahead, pause the video, and do B and D for me, please. Okay, let's see what you got as your final answers for those. Let's look at B. So we have equals 7x minus square root of 3 plus pi x squared. Okay, first thing is that our leading coefficient is not 0. So x squared, squared is our largest exponent. So when we write this in standard form, that would be our basically first term. The leading coefficient is pi, is not 0, so that works out. 2, are all the exponents whole numbers? Well, squared is, and remember on the 7x, that's x to the first. 1 is a whole number, so that's good. Next, we got to figure out, are all the coefficients real? 7 is a real number. What about square root of 3? Yes, that is a real number. It doesn't have I, so it is a real number. What about pi? That is also a real number. As long as it doesn't have I, it's a real number. So since we satisfied all 3 criteria, then yes, this is a polynomial function. Now let's rewrite it in standard form. Notice that squared is our largest exponent, so that needs to come first. Then we go 7x and then minus square root of 3. Remember, the constant is always the last term. Okay, now let's talk about what is the degree here. Okay, so our largest exponent is 2, so this is a quadratic. And then let's talk about what is the leading coefficient. In this case, our leading coefficient is pi. Okay, let's look at D. We have k of x equals x plus 2 to the x minus 0.6x to the fifth. Okay, first thing is our leading coefficient a number other than 1. X to the fifth, so that's 5, is going to be our largest exponent, so this would be our first term. And 0.6 or negative 0.6 is a number other than 0, so we're good to go. Now, are all the exponents whole numbers? Ooh, I see actually that one of the exponents is a variable. So, that is not a whole number. So remember, a whole number is basically a number 1 and up, okay? So since one of our exponents is not a whole number, then no, this is not a polynomial function. Okay, make sure you watch part 3 of this section.